Now on Grid Tonight, toward the end of last week, NASCAR released its 2025 schedule across the board. What are some of the most notable changes? The worst kept secret inside the Formula One paddock was finally confirmed. Is Kimi Antonelli ready for the pressure that comes with being a Mercedes Formula One driver? And defending Supercars champion Brody Kostecki has a new home in 2025. Can he help turn the Shelby Power 4 team back into weekly contenders? Hello to all of our viewers watching here in the United States and around the world. Welcome to Great Tonight, your weekly motorsports news program. I'm Kobe Lambeth, and with me are Joshua Birch and Matt White from Grid Endurance Performance Index. We encourage everyone to comment in the chat, ask questions, and support us through Super Chat. Now, Josh, take it away with our top story this evening.
Thank you, Kobe. Good evening to you. Good evening, Matt. Good evening, everybody. So, we're going to take a look at all three schedules for the 2025 NASCAR season, but we'll start with the Cup Series. Fox begins its coverage with the clash at Bowman Gray Stadium in early February. That's then followed by the Daytona 500 on February the 16th. A notable change is Circuit of the Americas moving up to early March before heading out west to Phoenix and Las Vegas. Homestead Miami loses its playoff race again in favor of a spring race date on March 23. And then the Darlington Spring Race also moves up an entire month to April the 6th. Amazon Prime kicks off its coverage on Memorial Day weekend with the Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte. Nashville moves up from the very end of June to the very beginning. Michigan moves up 2 full months from August to June 8th. And we've already talked about Mexico City on June 15th on last week's show. TNT will take over on June the 28th at Atlanta, with their coverage continuing on July 27th at Indianapolis for the Brickyard 400. Some notable changes in the second half of the summer stretch are Atlanta losing its playoff date and moving back to the summer and kicking off in the in-season tournament on TNT. Now, Dover also goes from being a spring to summer race, with Sonoma moving up from June to July. Now, when August 3 rolls around, the NBC will start their broadcast race into the end of the 2025 season. They begin at Iowa. Watkins Glen won't be in the playoffs as it returns to its traditional date in August, as Richmond gets a summer date down to one race there. Daytona returns as the regular season finale. Just quickly on that one, very well done, because I thought that was brilliant, because Darlington will also kick off the 2025 Cup Series playoffs, both races returning to what's become its typical spot on the schedule. Definitely, I think, one that solves every sort of problems we were seeing over the weekend. Now, after the Southern 500 open ups the postseason, Gateway will host its first ever playoff race. New Hampshire returns to the playoffs for the first time in several years on September the 21st. One of the biggest changes in the playoffs is Talladega moving back into the round of 8, adding to the drama of who could make the championship 4 at Phoenix. The 2025 Cup Series season concludes on November the 2nd. And a quick, interesting fact, all 4 broadcast partners get a crown jewel race. Daytona 500 is on Fox. The Coca-Cola 600 is on Amazon Prime. The Brickyard 400 is on TNT. And the Southern 500 is on NBC. All the graphics in this segment are courtesy of NASCAR. Well, just after Sunday's race, I'm not sure how much of a big one that Southern 500 was. It wasn't exactly the greatest one we saw. We were bored in the commentary box for the first 2 stages, and it's only really stage 3 that saved it. But Matt, welcome back to talk NASCAR with us as well. Having nearly a week to think about it now, what are your general opinions on the 2025 NASCAR Cup Series schedule?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about it last week, didn't we? Because the Mexico news broke before the show last week, and we kind of, as I said a few times, let's just wait for the schedule to come out before we start talking about who's who in the zoo and what's where. I kind of like it. There's a few things that I don't like, but there's a few things that I do like. Sunday the 2nd of February is the day of the bee. It's the Bathurst 12 hour. It's Bowman Gray, and it's my birthday to kick off the year, which is kind of cool. The one thing I don't like that really standing out to me is a bit. We're going to get to hots and knots, of course, later in the show, but the big knot of the calendar segment, Michigan. Well, Michigan, Mexico, Pocono in 3 weeks. Seems like a bizarre bit of scheduling, but there you go. Hopefully the logistical nightmare that will potentially bring, NASCAR have got on top of, and we've got plenty of time to get to it. But that was a glaring standout for me as soon as this landed. Those 3 races being back to back to back in the middle of the year. I like that we've got the Easter weekend break back. Obviously, the last couple of years we've still with COVID and the Olympic break and things like that. Having to move things around, that's not really worked. And of course, the Bristol Dirt race on Easter weekend just didn't work, full stop. So that's a good thing to have that break back. I know we've not got to Watkins Glen being a playoff race yet, but I didn't like the idea of it, and it's still to come. So having it back in August, where it should be, is good. New Hampshire was a surprise to me that that's now bumped up into the playoffs. Really didn't expect that. And that we're going to get trucks there. We'll get to that in a little while. That's kind of cool. And Homestead not being in the playoffs. Now, it's obviously traditionally been for a very long time the championship race until the last few years when we've been at Phoenix. But it now being bumped, where are we, all the way up to end of March, is, I don't know, seems like a strange one. But you would imagine that NASCAR have placed that race there because that March, April time is when we would generally see weather-related events, and we have done for the last few years in that area of the year. So going to a place which you would imagine isn't going to have too much in the way of rain in March is probably a decent idea, especially off the back of Phoenix and Vegas the couple of weeks before. So that's sensible that that's happened. But otherwise, I'm pretty happy with it. Gateway will be good in the playoffs because the Gateway races last couple of years have been fairly good, and of course we had all that drama there this year with Ryan Blaney running out of fuel and Austin Cindric sweeping by for the win. So if something like that happened to get into playoffs next year, we could have a surprise mover jumping into the next round. So yeah, pretty happy with it. There's a couple of things that turn my nose up at, especially that Mexico date where it is, considering all the other 2 races either side of it are more northern races in terms of the geography. But generally, I'm pretty pleased with it.
If we could just ask Kobe to bring that graphic back up one more time. I just want to bring out a point here as well. Take a look where Homestead Miami is on March the 23rd, and then take a look at Bristol on April the 13th. The reason I'm saying that is that Formula E are actually going to be at Homestead Miami for their second ever Miami Prix and the first on that Roval configuration. Just an interesting thing that they're only a couple of weeks separated, but they could have done the logical assumption, put them back to back, or even put them on the same weekend in order to try and drum up some publicity about the series as well in America. So just a bit of a confusion that I spotted that and immediately thought, oh, I wonder. But I expect then, Matt, just bring you on this one quickly. Formula E really do want to bring up publicity in America, and to have them go and have NASCAR go first, then Formula E later. There's got to be some sort of talk there to go, okay, when NASCAR's there, promote that we're going to be here in a few weeks' time and try and bring the fans back? Or should they have done the same weekend and trying to do like a crossing that we've seen NASCAR and IndyCar do?
I can't imagine that them being on at the same, they're not in the same scope, are they? NASCAR and Formula E. So I don't think a crossover weekend like we saw at the Indy GP last few years would work. But what would be a good idea is, and the way that it's worked out, if you go to the NASCAR race at Homestead, your NASCAR ticket can get you into Formula E at a discounted rate. Yeah, that should be on the cards for the people, the good people at Homestead, to get some more fans in the door for that race. That's of course on Long Beach weekend as well. Yeah. So we can have Bristol, Long Beach, and Homestead all on the telly at relatively the same time. I did the calculations. There's 4 IndyCar, of course, we've talked for a long time about IndyCar going to Fox next year. There are 4 clashes, with the first 4 IndyCar races, of course, being on Fox, while NASCAR has their Fox run. The only one that would be a slight stickling point is IndyCar at Barber is on the same Sunday as the Texas Cup race, but have that race at Barber on at 12:30, 1 o'clock local, and then Fox can go straight to the Cup race if it's going to be on Big Fox, of course, if that one's a Big Fox race. So that's one thing. But yeah, the home, that would be the Homestead. If I was working at Homestead Miami Speedway, and I'm not, but if they're listening, please give me a job. That would be, yes, if you can come to book your Formula E ticket with your NASCAR ticket number or whatever, and you can get 40% off or whatever. That would be a way to get the fans in. Adam says he's looking forward to it. Should be an interesting season. We've still got this one to finish, of course, Adam, and it starts, of course, this weekend. And hello to Matthew Owens, who says better placement for weather for Bristol, Michigan, and for Dover.
Absolutely, some better places in the calendar. And still, Matthew Owens says that stupid in-season tournament. No one is going to be keeping up with a bracket during the chaos of Atlanta, and no one will care about that more than winning the Brickyard 400 rough. Yeah, the in-season tournament, I'm not too sure how it's going to work. I think it's worth taking a look at it, but certainly when you've got a busy regular season and people fighting for playoffs, no one's going to be thinking, okay, let's just go for this in-season tournament when we're thinking bigger at the end of the year.
Especially if at Atlanta, all of the, well, not all, but a good chunk of the high-running championship people and playoff contenders all get swept up in a crash, then that blows the in-season tournament fairly wide open. Then, of course, it's the street race. That whole TNT stretch, of course, is the in-season tournament. So we're going to have Atlanta to start on as a plate race, super speedway race. Street race at Chicago, of course, we've seen weather the last couple of years there, so that could throw a spanner. Sonoma on another road course, and then the Brickyard 400 to finish it off. So that's going to be a wild 5-week July stretch. If you take the in-season tournament out and just have the championship as it should be, without that going on. But I think that's more of a social media thing going on over here while the racing is going on over here.
Yeah, it's going to be something to take a look in as well when we actually get around to it. And I'm just very much getting myself, my head around having to commentate the playoffs. So that's going to be quite fun when it starts on Sunday. Now, let's take a look at next year's Xfinity Series schedule. And all races will be shown on the CW network as well. Now, when I first heard the CW network, I immediately thought of Gilmore Girls, because that's the network it was on. So that was quite a surprise. But a wonderful network it's going to be on with the NBC crew. So Darlington will lose a date. Its only Xfinity race will take place on April the 5th. Many people are already circling April 19 on their calendars because the Xfinity Series will be returning to Rockingham. And as we said on the last week's show, Xfinity is also joining Cup in Mexico City in mid-June. And our own Joe Samiego will like this next part because the Portland race will return. But it's moving back from early June to the end of August as the penultimate race of the regular season. But the regular season finale will take place at Gateway on September the 6th, with this track returning to the Xfinity Series schedule for the first time since 2010. Meanwhile, the playoffs will see a few changes. Homestead moves to the spring as the Talladega fall race returns. Bristol moves from the regular season finale to the playoff opener, and the season concludes at Phoenix on November the 1st. New Hampshire, Richmond, and Michigan won't have any Xfinity races in 2025. So, Matt, what stands out the most to you from the 25 Xfinity Series schedule?
From a grid network point of view, that's 2 trips for Joe to Portland in the space of 4 weeks because he's got IndyCar 2 weeks before that. So plenty of Portland grid network stuff going on in August next year, which we're obviously looking forward to. Darlington going down to 1 race. It's a bit of a shame, but I understand why. And it never really was a double event until the last few years, really, to have, well, not even 2 Cup races for a time. So to have 2 Xfinity races is interesting. If Cody can just bring that back up on screen, that would be helpful. Thank you. Lovely. Looking forward to Rockingham. That is going to be really, really good. Much to the point that I didn't make talking about the Cup schedule. Kota, 3rd race of the season, big chance for some good road course people to get into the playoffs there, and some people that might not be eligible for playoffs to get a win. But again, much like the Cup schedule, fairly standard looking thing, really. Portland shuffling around is going to be interesting. Especially if you're getting down to the end of the regular season there and trying to find yourself a win, having a road course race as the penultimate race of the regular season might be very valuable to some people. And Gateway being the regular season cutoff race is going to be different because the regular season cutoff race does seem to move around a bit more in the Xfinity Series than it has in Cup. Of course, we just had it at Darlington last weekend. So playoffs is pretty standard from what we've seen the last few years. The Xfinity Series always puts on really good. Last few years really has put on some great stuff. So looking forward to seeing how this one progresses. But apart from Mexico coming in, really not too much to talk about on the schedule side. It's the TV deal side that's more of a thing, as Matthew will attest to. And he says a little disappointed not to see the more standalone events for Xfinity with a new TV partner, hopefully in 26. Yeah, that's the thing. We've got Rockingham there, obviously, and Portland. It'd be nice if they added another couple in somewhere along the line. Maybe, I don't know where, but even if it's a track that the Cup Series has already been to, drop Xfinity off it for one weekend and then bring it in later on in the year at somewhere to have its own date without having a second Cup race, if that makes sense. So interesting to see what happens there, and if they can feed a few more in, not just for Xfinity, maybe for the Truck Series as well.
Yeah, with being on the home for the CW now, it's separate from any other of the networks as well. And NBC still producing that with Rick Allen stepping over to the TV team. So it's all working kind of well, actually. I've been enjoying watching the Xfinity Series, and we'll look forward to when we get into the playoff season as well. So, last but not least, here's the 2025 Truck Series schedule. Now, all races are going to be shown on Fox Sports 1. We'll see the number of races increase from 23 to 25 races, beginning at Daytona on February the 14th. COTA is gone from the schedule, but the trucks will join Xfinity at The Rock on April the 18th, and they'll return to Michigan for the first time in a few years on June the 7th. And we'll also see 2 road course races during the regular season. The trucks will make their first trip to Lime Rock Park in Connecticut on June the 28th and return to Watkins Glen on August the 8th before the regular season finale at Richmond on August the 15th. The Darlington race will shift from the spring to August 30th to kick off the 2025 Truck Series playoffs. The Milwaukee Mile was this year's playoff opener, but that track has completely fallen off the schedule. Then on September 20th, the trucks return to New Hampshire for the first time since 2017, followed by the series debut race on the Charlotte Roval. That's going to be on October the 3rd. The 2025 season concludes on October the 31st at Phoenix as well. Another quick note, the Truck Series won't race at Gateway in 2025. Would you like to see the series increase to 25 races? And did they do a good job with this particular schedule for the trucks?
I like it. What they have gone away from, which we saw a few years back now, where we'd have Daytona to start the year as per tradition on the Friday night, and then they'd maybe go to somewhere else a week later, and then we wouldn't see them again until Martinsville. There'd be like a 5 or 6 week gap. That has thankfully gone away over the last couple of years and continues, and they've shortened up the gaps at the end of the season from when the regular season finishes and into the playoffs. We've got a week there between Richmond and Darlington, then another week or so to Bristol, and another week to New Hampshire. So that's all tightened up quite nicely. Lime Rock will be an absolute barn burner in the summer there. Great for them to get that deal done, especially as they've kind of fallen a little bit out of favour with the IMSA paddock over the last couple of years and lost their big race there with the big cars and with the GTs as well. So, excuse me. Again, talking of road course races, Lime Rock to IRP to Watkins Glen to finish just before the end of the Truck Series schedule is going to be interesting. As is the Roval as a truck race for the first time. Stand by your beds and stand back from the fence on that one, because that is going to be that's got chaos written all over it, frankly. On a Friday night, perhaps going into the darkness. Who knows what will happen in a truck race at the Roval? But the moving around of the dates slightly and moving them closer together, having a good stretch run there through March into April is really good for me. I like this Truck Series schedule, and always, again, with all 3 series when we get into playoff time, although there's a bit more elongated playoff run for the trucks, it's always exciting racing. More from Mr. Owens. He says, real highlights here. Trucks at Michigan are an absolute treat. They really are. They've not been there for a while. Lime Rock and the Roval will be a spectacle. And a lot more Friday night races, or Friday races, it feels like too, especially. And you can add to that the Thursday night race at Bristol on night race weekend. 16 Friday races, I'm counting, and a Thursday. There you go. So if you're at a loose end on a Friday and you need to get some motorsport in your life, you can watch the Truck Series. Jackson says, really hope IMSA can return at some point. I'm guessing he's pointing towards Lime Rock there. Obviously, NASCAR owns series, so entirely possible. Yes, that would be good to see the IMSA cars back up there. Adam is in agreement. Can't wait for Lime Rock with the Truck Series. Going to be awesome, he says. Like to see those comments, and we'll hopefully get some more in. What do you think, watchers and viewers out there, about the schedules? Because it's been a talking point of discussion on the show last week because we knew it was coming, and in the group chat. So let's hear your views on schedule news.
Well, I can tell you mine. The only series we're now waiting for is MotoGP, which I'm not supposed to say this, but I may have seen a calendar that has been.
I've seen a list of races in an order with no date next to them.
Yeah, I've seen a bit of a title list with some names or with some dates attached to them. And I know that the teams are still haggling because they don't like those particular dates. So I think that's the reason this calendar's taken a long time to push out. I'm hearing it could be announced on this weekend going in, or it's going to be the next weekend before we start all the flyaway races. So maybe the not San Marino, but actually the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix in late September. We could have those dates. Yeah. So
waiting for MotoGP and waiting for supercars. Otherwise, you can put your pens and your papers together and or your Word documents, as I do, and get all your calendars ready to go, because it's calendar news is excellent. Love a good bit of calendar news, and it gets us all excited for next year.
The 2025 chart is already being filled in as to what races are going to be on what weekend, and then we'll get all the times in once they're announced. Then literally everybody thinks that we all spend the off season doing nothing and relaxing. No, every single member of the team is doing something of planning where they're going to be in the following year. And especially, I know Joe does it. I know you do it, Matt. I know Matthew does it. I know I certainly do it. We all get the list of races and all the times that we're covering it, and we plan who's going to be on what broadcast, who's going to be doing what show. There is major pre-production that goes into a season. It is insane. I mean, this year, I think it's something like close to 400 broadcasts in total. Wow. It's insane. Maybe more. I've probably miscounted last year. I know it was at 359. So that was a lot. And we've added NASCAR to that. So that's why it's probably closer to 400. So let's move on to our second story, and keeping it now in the world of Formula One, because as Kobe said at the top of the show, one of the worst kept secrets inside the Formula One paddock was made official at Monza as well. Kimi Antonelli will graduate from Formula 2 and become a full-time Mercedes F1 driver to replace Lewis Hamilton in 2025. Now, at 18 years old, Antonelli has taken a fast track to the pinnacle of motorsport. In 2019, when he was 12 years old, he became a Mercedes development driver. After dominating the FIA Karting European Championship and the WSK Euro Series, he quickly moved on from karting and graduated to single-seaters. Antonelli made this look easy too, winning the 2022 championships in ADAC and Italian F4, and then claiming the 2023 Formula Regional European Championship as well. For the 2024 season, Mercedes decided that Antonelli should skip Formula 3 altogether, so they put together a program for him in Formula 2 with Prema. Now, after rising above the best of the competition early in his racing career, his only season F2 has definitely been humbled and more challenging for the young Italian. So far, only 2 race victories, the sprint race at Silverstone and a feature race in Hungary. Then he got to make his free practice 1 debut last weekend at Monza for Mercedes in place of George Russell in front of his home crowd. But Antonelli's first FP1 session ended with a crash, the photo courtesy there of Mercedes. Well, he's been brewing in the background. Toto Wolff has had his eye on him. Apparently, 5 minutes after Lewis Hamilton told him he was leaving for Mercedes. Don't believe that for 1 minute. Yes, I know he's been planned to take over the Mercedes seat. Do I think he was going to be in for 2025? No, I thought 2026. But the question, as Kobe joined us now, we'll go to him first. Do you think Antonelli can handle all of the pressure of being a Mercedes Formula One driver? And does his FP1 crash concern you that Mercedes is rushing him up a bit too soon?
Well, like I always say when it comes to many of these news stories, Josh, we're just gonna have to wait and see. But the one thing you can't deny is all the time and money that Mercedes have poured into Kimi Antonelli to make sure that he's ready for this jump to Formula One. And Josh, you just read a timeline of his racing career. It's really crazy now that it's the year 2024, and 2019 doesn't really seem too long ago, which is which is really crazy. I remember what I was doing in 2019. I think I was about halfway through my time at university,
Same
just
here.
trying to just trying to make it in life, try to make it into the world of motorsports. And here was this kid, 12-year-old Kimi Antonelli, just getting started. And I think it's really crazy in just a matter of 6 years. He goes from like the very beginning level of motor racing over there in Europe, and then all of a sudden he's going to become a Formula One driver, just a remarkable rise. And there's obviously been a lot of hype behind Kimi Antonelli for the last several years, saying that he's like a generational talent that, and even I said on this show, he's basically the Victor Wembanyama of motorsports. This young sensational generational talent that only comes around one time every 10 years. So if you want to sign a young driver to build your program around, this is the guy. And a lot of people believe that Kimi Antonelli, is going to be the type of driver, you give him the proper car, he can go out there, win a whole bunch of Formula One Grand Prix races and multiple world championships as well. So sky's the limit for him. And yes, do I think he can handle all the pressure of being a Mercedes F1 driver? Well, he really doesn't have a choice. I always said that I thought Antonelli would probably benefit from doing one more year of Formula 2. I think that really could have helped him. I know this year, just filling things out. This is like the first time in Kimi's racing career where he's actually, I don't want to say struggled, but not go out and dominate, the competition like we've seen during these seasons in the other categories leading up to Formula 2. It didn't surprise me that they skipped Formula 3 altogether, but it probably wouldn't have hurt him to do Formula 3 to move up to F2. But this is the program that he's on, and if he did go to Formula 1 next year, I thought it would be a good idea for him to drive for Williams, and then go up to Mercedes the following year or two. But obviously, Williams had other plans when they brought in Carlos Sainz to occupy that seat. And leading up to the show, I read a whole bunch of transcripts from Total Wolff over the weekend, see what he had to say about Antonelli. And interestingly enough, he said he learned from his mistake with George Russell. He felt like he kept George Russell at Williams way too long, and he didn't want to make the same mistake with Kimi. So he figured, no time is like the present, to bring him up into the Mercedes F1 team. And I think Kimi is obviously going to have a lot of pressure on his hands. And Toto even went on and talked about George's time at Williams. He said how George was a young driver. He made a whole bunch of mistakes, but it happened at Williams, where there's not a lot of pressure, where you can get away with making certain mistakes at Williams versus Mercedes. And if Kimi makes a mistake, just like he did in free practice one at Monza, a lot of people are going to, start talking about all of this. But even Toto himself, typically you see these F1 team principals, they get very frustrated, when these young drivers, crash cars and make mistakes. That's how that turned out for Logan Sargent at Williams with James Vowles and all of that. Yeah, they don't usually like that. But Toto was like, it happens. Kimi needs to learn, when to push, when to not. And FP1 was a time for him not to push. Yeah, so Toto just basically said that was a learning experience for Kimi there. And I'm actually not concerned about his FP1 crash, being a concern that he's moving up too quickly. We've seen the best of the best, crash at Monza, any other circuit. I'm actually gonna agree with Toto on this, that this is, his first time in a proper F1 session, and he was just pushing it way too hard. And that's a lesson that he's gonna have to learn. It's better to learn it now, the next season. Yeah, but overall, I think Kimi Antonelli is more than likely going to be okay. And I do understand all the concerns about having him rushed up. I probably wouldn't have rushed him up to Formula One this quickly, or even to Mercedes. Probably would have sat him in the Williams car for a season or two. But this is the decision that's been made, and we'll have to see how it turns out for Kimi Antonelli. Looking forward to seeing what he can do in 2025 and beyond.
Good to see that Toto has, in retrospect, realised that leaving George at Williams for far too long was a mistake. On the crash that he had on Friday, emulating the safety car going in on the same corner on Thursday afternoon, of course, which was made us give us all a smile, didn't it, when Maylander crashed the Aston Martin. The onboard, if you watch the onboard, he was driving it like it was a Q3 lap. He was absolutely hammering the thing, and just made a mistake. But putting him in the spotlight and give it, is he going to get the crashes out of his system and mistakes out of his system early? That's going to be one we'll have to watch out for as the season progresses next year. Is he going to do what they used to say about Marco Simoncelli in MotoGP? He got all his crashing out, and not Simoncelli as well, but like people like Stoner and stuff, got their crashes out the way, and then when they'd done all their crashing, they were really fast and really consistent. So maybe that's a thing that we'll have to watch out for. His F2 form has been, as you mentioned, Josh, a little bit up and down, 2 race wins, but we're in a different F2 this year than we were last year with this new car, and all the teams are taking their time to figure it out. And we've had all sorts of mechanical melodies with it as well at the beginning of the season. So, and always shuffles. Yeah, mechachrome clutches and all sorts of things. Always takes them a little while, and it always shuffles the deck in F2 when we get a new chassis. And Prema, of course, have been one of the top teams in it for a long time, and now they're struggling a little bit. But both of their drivers are going to Formula One next year. What's he going to do as a mate? I think he's going to be fine. It might take him a few races to get up to the speed of his teammate, but he's got the team behind him and he's got plenty of experience, so of course it will take time, but I think he's going to be fine. Let's hope for his sake that his candle doesn't burn extremely brightly and then fizzle out once he gets to the top step at Formula One. That's going to be something to watch out for over the next couple of years, especially with the maybe less talked about talent coming in next year, like Ollie Behrman, and to some extent, and we saw it at the weekend, Franco Colapinto, who of course apparently nobody had ever heard of, but he did a great job at Williams at the weekend. So let's see. Again, that's a phrase I often say on this show. We'll have to just wait and see how it goes, but I think he's going to do just fine. Will he be at Hamilton levels of performance? I expect not. That's a huge step to take, but Mercedes have got to get their act together with the car as well, of course. So if they're not at the front end like they have been the last couple of years, then it doesn't give him as much of a chance to show us what he can do.
Antonelli will definitely win a race next year, 100%. If with the regulations closing in the way they are and everything like that, he's 100% going to win a race. So, also, just quickly, I was talking to Bert Molander actually in 2019, coincidentally enough, and it was when I was doing a pit walk and he was there with the safety car. I said to him, have you ever had an accident with the safety car or anything like that? He never crashed the safety car, so that was the first time he's crashed the safety car that weekend as well. So yeah, not the greatest to happen, but that's one car he won't have in that barn as well, that where he keeps them all. If you haven't seen it, Google it on YouTube. He's got a barn full of old safety cars dating back to 2000. It's really quite nice. Mercedes and now Aston Martin. But with Mercedes and Hamilton departing the team, Mercedes bringing in a young driver with plenty of upside. The team will be asking George Russell to step up as leader next year. Now, since 2022, Russell has been learning under the wings of Hamilton, and now he gets to play the role of mentor with the team as Antonelli gets up to speed as well. Russell said Antonelli's junior Formula record is formidable and that he deserves this promotion up to Formula One. He mentioned how Hamilton mentored him early in his F1 career, and he hopes to do the same for Antonelli by providing guidance. We definitely saw that as a case for Hamilton, always talking to George and giving him advice on corners and doing many a track walk with him as well. So is George Russell ready to assume his new role as the team leader? And how long do you think that this honeymoon period will last between him and Antonelli?
Well, yes, I think George is ready. He's been there, 3 years now, off the top of my head, 3 years at the top team there. So, and now he's going to be the number one driver. He's got the experience of the team, how everything works, etc., etc. And this young kid's going to have to look to George for some guidance, and see how they go. But if the tables get turned and we turn up at Melbourne next year and Mercedes have got the best car and Antonelli wins on debut, then we've got a show on our hands, haven't we, if that's the case? So again, much to my answer in the previous bit, we'll have to wait and see what happens. But I think if they've got a good car under them, and as you say, I was about to burn a hot then, but I'll keep it for later. The parity in the championship at the moment is just extraordinary. If Mercedes are up there and they've got two guys fighting at the front, every chance, as you said, Josh, that Antonelli can win a race next season. It's not without outside the realms of possibility.
Yeah, going to go to Kobe now with some breaking news if he's ready to throw it in as well. So, Kobe.
Yeah, I'll get to it in a second, Josh. But first, gonna answer the question so we can close out our Formula
No
One.
worries.
Yeah, close out our F1 segment before we get to our breaking news. That you asked about George Russell being ready to assume this role as team leader. Yeah, I think George is absolutely ready for this. He's already shown, that time and time again that he can be a leader on this team, and he's learned from one of the best leaders there is in the Formula One paddock, in Lewis Hamilton. I'm sure he's taken a lot from Lewis in the last few seasons since they've been teammates, and George is ready to run with this new opportunity to be the top driver at Mercedes and help lead the team into this new era without Lewis Hamilton being there. And yeah, I think at first, it'll be all good between him and Kimi Antonelli, but as Kimi Antonelli, starts to get that experience and up to speed in Formula One, and we start to get to the point where Kimi is, let's say he starts out performing George and all of that, then obviously things aren't going to be as nice as they seem in Monza, with George wanting to be his mentor and help out Kimi, but it's a different story on the racetrack. And once you see one driver outperforming the other, then that's when things get a little tense. I don't really know how long this so-called honeymoon period will last, but certainly, I'm sure at some point in the future, Russell and Antonelli won't see eye to eye on something. It's just inevitable. It happens between all of them. Look where Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri are right now. We thought, that they'd be, I guess I don't want to say buddy for the longest time, and now we're talking about team orders in F1 with the McLaren team, and especially how that Italian Grand Prix worked out for McLaren. Total missed opportunity there. So yeah, I think we could potentially see some fireworks there in the future. But for the time being, just going to sit back and enjoy the news and the exciting driver pairing that we're going to see next year at Mercedes between Russell and Antonelli. And as Josh said, got some breaking news. I want to thank our own Jackson Lambros for notifying us about this news that just dropped, confirmed by Racer.com. Marshall Pruitt, Chip Ganassi Racing, announcing that they're going to be dropping down from 5 cars to 3 cars next year full time. And we already know their sports car program is in limbo. There's some rumors that they could be taking a hiatus and potentially come back to IMSA prototype racing in 2026 with a brand new factory-backed GTP program. So stay tuned on that, and there could potentially be an announcement on that, in the coming weeks ahead. But for today's news, Chip Ganassi Racing confirmed to Racer.com they're going to be dropping down to 3 full-time cars in the NTT IndyCar Series. Yes, and 2 of those teams are going to go away. And with the additional staff that's left over, it looks like they're planning to enter the Indy Next Series in 2025, which will be a very welcome thing to see, because right now Andretti Global and HMD Motorsports, that's basically the entire series. And then you have, Able Motorsports and a few other teams, that kind of struggle along here and there. But really the bulk of that series is Andretti and HMD, and now have another powerhouse come into the series, and Chip Ganassi Racing with their plans to expand, on the road to Indy ladder system. Yeah, I'll start off with you, Matt. You, Josh. What's your reaction to this news about Chip Ganassi, downsizing to 3 full-time cars and then plans to go into Indy Next?
I can't say I'm massively surprised by this news, because it's going to be a fight for the 8, isn't it? Because they'll keep the 9 and the 10. I guess the 8 car will be the other of the 3 cars, split between Lundqvist, Kevin Simpson, and or whoever else. This is a bit of a trend, I feel like, with Chip. You'll have 5 cars in IndyCar, and you'll have sports cars, and then that will kind of dilute down a little bit. Then it will all come back again a couple of years later, depending on how the land lies. So we're in the Ganassi peak and trough of what they're doing and where they're doing it. But if that rumor is to be true, that they're going to run some cars in Indy next year, which I think I hotted a couple of weeks ago, saying how good Indy Next has turned into after being in the doldrums about 18 months ago, then that would be great. And some good people there to run some fast cars to help more youngsters come through into IndyCar, which can't be a bad thing, can it?
Absolutely. And I'm literally just talking to Jackson now as well. He's going to put the thing in there as well, but he's said in with highlighting bits of the press release that it's the 8 car currently driven by Linus Lundqvist, the 9, which is Scott Dixon, the 10 of Alex Palou. Now, Dixon and Palou is definitely safe, but it's Kiffin Simpson which the article from Racer.com says could be tipped to go into the seat. I asked Jackson that, and he said if they need the cash, then sure. So it could be that Simpson stays in on a cash deal to go in there for the 8 car, replacing Linus Lundqvist. And Lundqvist, of course, after last Sunday's race, isn't exactly top billing, is he, to go in for another full-time seat? So that's going to be interesting to keep an eye on. But yeah, I find that really interesting. It's not often we get breaking news middle of the show, is it? That's always exciting to stay in. And Jackson's been on the ball there, keeping us up. And Jackson's now saying as well, regardless, it's hard to imagine the two outliners not going straight to Prema as well. That's a good point, actually. I'm going to sneeze.
But we think Logan Sargent's going to Prema, so that will leave one of them looking on the outside, maybe.
Did you see David Francesco's tweet in the photo that he was already with Logan Sargent?
Oh, right, okay. Kiffin Simpson's got some prototype experience. He was running in ELMS last year, so he could end up in a P2 car in IMSA perhaps next season. So there's an outlet for him there. So plenty of options for plenty of people. Jackson also says, buying and selling chances is fine regardless of engines. Honda and Chevy teams can play ball with each other. Yeah, it's the weighing up of you've got this, but we've got this. Can we give you that for that? And all swapping around and all the dealings. And of course, the IndyCar postseason is much longer than everywhere else because we end next weekend, isn't it, at Nashville? Yeah. So there's plenty of time for all this dealing to be done, and we'll bring you all the notes on it on the show between now and Christmas if there is anything to talk about. There's something to talk about from Adam. Could we see Hailie Deegan in Indy next? I'm going to go with a hot no.
Well, I'm not really sure where Hailie Deegan is going to end up, but if you're paying attention to her YouTube channel, she recently tested a Formula 3 car, which was very interesting. And it makes me wonder if she could be heading to F1 Academy or something like that. Maybe it's on the road to Indy. Who really knows? Maybe Hailie is just testing out different types of cars right now. Cause I've seen Hailie driving, several types of cars in multiple disciplines recently. I guess she's just seeing like what's out there, like what path she can go down, because I think she's in the exploratory phase right now. Like, does she want to stay on the NASCAR path? Does she want to go down open wheel? I thought she did a really good job when she was in IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge for those races with Ford. I thought she really held her own and had very good pace in those cars. So I guess that could be an option as well. There's a lot of places Hailie Deegan could go with her racing career. Yeah, but it was interesting seeing her testing that Formula 3 car.
Now, I must apologize because somebody has sprayed something on the landing and I'm allergic to it. So it's sort of hit me now and my nose is starting to run. So if I sneeze or duck out a shot, that's because I don't want you lovely people watching to see me having a cold. I hope they add Kentucky back as well. That's back to the schedules earlier on for the NASCAR series as well. I hope they do. I liked Kentucky. I really did like it. Sorry, I know many people didn't, but I did. So let's move on to our third story of the evening then as well, as I'm losing my ears. With last week's announcement of Anton De Pascal leaving Dick Johnson Racing for Team 18, we've learned that defending Repco Supercar champion Brody Kostecki is going to replace him in the Shell V-Power Ford Mustang. Now, given the turmoil at Airbus Motorsport and missing the start of the 2024 season due to drama behind the scenes, a change of scenery was a must for Kostecki. I seem to remember earlier on in the year, a certain Matt White saying free Brody as the hashtag. Yeah, I thought so. He said he's excited to join the team with such a rich history of success. Now, while Dick Johnson added that Kostecki is one of the top drivers in the series, praising him for his mechanical sympathy and understanding of the car, Will Davison will also return to the team alongside his new teammate, and the photo courtesy there of Dick Johnson Racing. Now, in what has been a down, turbulent season with Airbus, will a change of scenery actually help Brody Kostecki return to his winning ways? I'll start with you, Kobe.
Well, I guess Brody's officially been freed, right? And just looking at Brody this year throughout the season when he made his shock return after missing the start of the season, Brody's looked very miserable at the track. They're like looking at his mannerisms last year, previous years. He seemed very happy to be there at the track driving. But this year, you can see. I mean, you can see a smile on Brody's face, but it kind of looks like a fake smile. It's like he's just smiling in front of cameras at everything and pretending that everything is great. But it really seems like Brody hasn't been having any fun since all of the drama that's been happening behind the scenes with Erebus Motorsport. So I think that nobody really thought that Brody Kostecki was going to stay at Erebus, after the end of this year. It was almost certainly that they were going to be parting ways, and that's exactly what happened. It's going to be weird seeing Brody Kostecki in a Ford Mustang next year instead of a Chevrolet because, during this time of supercars, that's all we've basically ever known. And to see him in one of those Chevy Power Fords next year, it's going to take a while getting used to that. But yeah, I think it'll be a good opportunity for him. I know Dick Johnson Racing hasn't been the same dominant force that they've been, in the last few years or so. They really haven't been the same since Scott McLaughlin left supercars and went off to the IndyCar series, and also since Team Penske left Dick Johnson Racing as well. This team has kind of taken a step backwards in a way. Yeah, so I'm sure Dick Johnson Racing is going to continue to try to add people to the program, try to improve, and we'll see if they're able to be a regular contender once again instead of taking a race win every now and then. We could see them battling week in and week out, and I think that next year we could see Brody Kostecki get back to where we usually see him, which is towards the front. I don't know if I'm going to say his winning ways yet. Since Dick Johnson Racing, they're not always in contention weekly to win these races, but I think Brody will be performing a lot better with them compared to where he's at now, because he seems like someone, I'm just fulfilling my obligations via my contract, and I'm just ready to get this over with, so I can move on to the next chapter. I think that's really where Brody's at. He's just waiting for this to be over so he can move on to happier days in a new environment.
Free Brody Kostecki. He's out at last at Erebus. You're right, Kobe. It was like he'd handed his notice in, but he was having to work until he was allowed to leave. And that's basically what this season has been about. If you'd sat here September last year, he was leading the championship, heading to endurance season, which is about to start in a couple of weeks at Sandown, and then we've got the big one at Bathurst not so far away. All of that was, he had Will Brown as his teammate. They had Coca-Cola as a big partner at Erebus. They were leading the championship, leading the team's championship, and all of that in the couple of months towards the end of the year, as we talked about a lot on the show at the beginning of this year, it just crumbled around him. Then, of course, he misses the first two rounds of the Grand Prix and at Bathurst at the beginning of the year for the 500 because of the contract issues. Now he's back. He's just been going through the motions. He got a podium at Hidden Valley back in June, which was good to see him back. And I said, I think at the time, if he's going to go anywhere, DJR are going to have to get in there first and try and get his signature, and they've done that. The surprising part to me about this, and I'll come to Adam's comment in a second, is that Will Davison has stayed, and Anton Di Pasquale, who was brought in off the back of Scott McLaughlin leading, as you mentioned, Kobe, since Scott and the Penske side of things left, it's just not been the same down there. Anton was brought in as the next, race-winning great hope for that team, and it hasn't happened for whatever reason. He's won a few races, but he's never really got through a championship and kept in the hunt, I guess, especially against Shane Van Gisbergen in the last couple of years. And now he's gone and he's going to Team 18, where Mark Winterbottom has left, or will be leaving there. So it's going to be the old Erebus team back together of David Reynolds and Anton at Team 18 next year. I like the move for Brody to DJR, says Adam. He will win in 2025. Certainly will. I think, like, we've had all the parity stuff that's been going on back in the last year, beginning of this year. Ford are now in play, and we've seen that with Chaz Mosta over the last few rounds. He's in the hunt for the championship while driving a Ford. So, again, it's going to take Brody a little while maybe to get used to the differences between the Camaro and the Mustang, but we saw how good he was last year to go on and win the championship. So there's absolutely no reason why he can't be maybe, the real next big thing for that team after Scotty Mack departing a few years ago. So I'm really excited to see what he can do.
It's all change in the motorsport world, and round about good time actually for Brody, because we were worried about him all season long, and it was one of the first discussions we had. Well, what was it, back in March as well, wasn't it? Just after the opening race of the season, that Brody wasn't there, and it was all rumored as to what exactly was going on. Why is he all of a sudden fallen out after winning the championship? And he's now free. He is a free Brody as well, not a free bird. I was about to turn my chair as well for the voice, but I'm wearing I'm wearing, wired earpieces, so I can't actually do the full turn. But I would have turned for you, Matt, there with your song. So while we do that, Tom Jones, all right. Let's hear the next. I'm not going to do that in a Tom Jones accent. I can't do a good Welsh accent. Here's Matt White, though, with the latest from our grid EPI update. And he went Welsh there as well.
Thank you, Josh. This week's Grid Endurance Performance Index update takes in the Circuit of the Americas at COTA, where the next round of the World Endurance Championship took place on Sunday. And it was a win for Ferrari, but not the factory team. AF Corsa getting the victory that they, some say, probably should have got at Le Mans before the Kubica and Dries Vanthoor crash, of course, in the nighttime. But Kubica, Robert Schwartzman and Yifei getting the victory in the hypercar class on Sunday afternoon at COTA. The GT3 race was won by the American team, Heart of Racing, Ian James, Alex Ramirez, and Daniel Mancielli, who of course ended Le Mans on his roof, getting the victory in the GT3 category. A couple more races to add on from the weekend, or at Spa. The ADAC GT Masters were in action there over the weekend. 2 races, Elias Sepinen and Tom Callender winning on Saturday, and Maxime Ouston and Leon Kohler winning on Sunday. A couple more races to go for that championship, and a couple more for the WEC there at Fuji in a couple of weeks' time. Here is the updated points, and because Andre Lotterer, Lawrence Vanthoor and Kevin Estre had their worst finish of the season, 6th at the weekend, we have to sound the siren, to use a Chase Elliott reference, because we have an American at the top of the Grid Endurance Performance Index for, I think, the first time, certainly the first time this year. Dane Cameron takes over as the points leader. He and teammate Felipe Nasr, of course, championship leaders in the IMSA DPI category. And Dane Cameron is now top of the pops in the Grid Endurance Performance Index through week 23. There is the updated top 10. Still all factory Porsche drivers through the top 5, plus Sebastian Pereira in 6th position. There is how the top 50 looks through 23 weeks and 104 races. This weekend coming up, we have a couple more races to add on. DTM are back in action there at the Saxon Ring. Always some action-packed racing there at that circuit. The final sprint races for the GT World Challenge USA are at Barber Motorsports Park at the weekend, and British GT is at Donington Park for its last endurance race, or second to last endurance race, should I say, of the season. So we'll give you the update on those races and a points update too. Dane Cameron will certainly hold on to his lead for another week until we get to the next IMSA race, which of course is the 6 hours at Indianapolis in the middle of September. So American flag is top of the tree in the Grid Endurance Performance Index through week 23. Time to hand over to Kobe now, and he's got more of the week's headlines.
Thanks, Matt. Time for some more motorsports news from around the world, and we just talked about it. But replacing Brody Kostecki at Airbus Motorsport is Dunlop Super 2 Series driver Cooper Murray, who'll drive the number 99 Chevrolet alongside the returning Jack LeBrock. Airbus has a history of giving young drivers their big break to join the main game, like Kostecki, Will Brown, Anton De Pasquale, and now Murray. At the moment, Murray is currently driving for Eggleston Motorsport in Super 2. He finished 4th in the championship last year. However, 2024 has been a somewhat disappointing year for him. He's currently 21st in points and what's been a year full of bad luck and misfortunes, but he did make his Supercars debut earlier this year and a wildcard entry for Triple Eight during the Darwin Triple Crown weekend. Team owner Betty Klemenko said signing Murray is the continuation of the team's history of developing young drivers, and believes Jack LeBrock taking on a more leadership role makes it a good time to pair him up with a young driver who can learn and grow alongside him. Photo courtesy of Erebus Motorsport. NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series regular Christian Eckes is moving up to the Xfinity Series full-time in 2025. Eckes will drive the number 16 Chevrolet for Colic Racing, replacing AJ Allmendinger, who's returning to the Cup Series again. And what's been a strong season for him in the Truck Series, Eckes won the regular season championship and has visited victory lane 3 times, including a show of total domination at Nashville Superspeedway, where he led every single lap of that race. Now, Eckes will get to prove himself in Xfinity. Team owner Matt Collett said Eckes is one of the brightest young stars in the sport and has shown in the last 2 years that he's ready for the next level of competition. Graphic courtesy of Colleague Racing. During the 2024 Formula 3 season finale weekend at Monza, the series unveiled a brand new F3 car that will debut in 2025. The car will race through the end of the 2027 season, as the new look is in line with the current F2 and F1 cars. It will have the same safety features, system, and performance at affordable cost. The car was designed to boost overtaking capabilities and improve driver installation to accommodate for a wide range of drivers, plus more features that you can read about on FIAFormula3.com. Teams will receive their first car before the end of December 2024, while the other two cars will arrive in mid-January 2025. Graphic courtesy of Formula 3. And sticking with Formula 3, and if I was participating in the Hots and Knots segment, this guy would probably be one of my hots for that crazy move he made on the last corner in Parabolica. And yeah, 2024 Formula 3 champion Leonardo Fornaroli is moving up to Formula 2 in 2025. Fornaroli will drive for Invicta Racing full-time next season as he progresses on the road to F1 ladder system in spectacular fashion. Fornaroli won the F3 title despite not winning a single race. A year of consistency helped him take home the hardware. While his championship rivals were all over the map results-wise, Fornaroli scored 7 podiums and he finished inside the points in 18 out of 20 races. It can't get more consistent than that, right? He said being able to drive for the best team in F3 and sign with the best team in F2 for 2025 is truly a dream come true. Photo courtesy of Invicta Racing. The ABB FI Formula E World Championship will continue racing in Saudi Arabia in season 11. However, we'll see a change of venues as Formula 3's annual race in Saudi Arabia will shift from Diriyah to Jeddah. Since the first Formula E race in the Middle Eastern country back in 2018, we've seen the Diriyah E-Prix take place on the Riyadh Street Circuit. Now, Formula E will race on the Jeddah Corniche Circuit, the home of Formula One Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. The Jeddah E-Prix doubleheader will take place on February 14th and 15th in 2025. Graphic courtesy of Formula E. And with the 2024 NASCAR Cup Series playoffs about to get underway this weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway, NASCAR Studios announced 3 new shows that will debut in the coming days. The first show is called NASCAR Inside the Playoffs, which will debut tomorrow night, Thursday, September 5th from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time on True TV and streaming on Max. This will be a regular show on Thursday nights throughout the playoffs, hosted by Shannon Spate, Steve Letarte, and Mamba Smith. There will also be a fourth spot for a rotating co-host of current and former drivers, with Kyle Busch making an appearance on the first 2 episodes, while Jordan Bianchi from The Athletic will also join the show to cover the latest breaking news and headlines in NASCAR. The second show is titled NASCAR Daily, which will air Monday through Friday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time on YouTube and other podcast platforms. The first episode of NASCAR Daily will debut on Monday, September 9th. Shannon Spake will also host this program with guest appearances from drivers, industry personalities, and others, in what will be a program that will be 10 minutes long every weekday morning. The third and final show, Drop the Jack, will have some of the top pit crew members and other industry veterans engaged in a discussion about life at and away from the track. Mamba Smith is going to lead this show alongside pit crew members Darrell Edwards, Michael Hicks, Jordan Page, Paul Swan, and other special guests. These 3 shows will run through the new NASCAR Productions home in Concord, North Carolina, graphic courtesy of NASCAR Creative Design. With that said, I'm going to turn over to Matt for everyone's favorite game, Pick a Winner.
Just before we do pick a winner, content everywhere. And when you've got 200 podcasts in your queue, please don't make me add more to my list. I'll never get through any of them. Pick a winner time then for this week, and it is on to WRC and Greece. 4 more rounds to go in the World Rally Championship for this year. There's the championship standings for Pick a Winner on the side of the screen, and Matt B now has a 9-point lead over Ben Schneider at the top of the standings. It's going to be a close run thing for second, because there's 6 people within 11 points, so that's going to be a tight run, and myself and Kobe are in that mix for the runner-up spot, but it looks like Matt has got himself sewn up the championship. Still plenty of points to go. 56 points still on the table, and we're only at the beginning of September, so you could be without points right now and still beat Matt to the Pick a Winner Championship. We've got 2 to pick from tonight, and as I've said, we'll start with the WRC, which gets underway on Friday in Greece. which is going to be a really interesting rally. But I was going to pick Ogier, but I think I'm going to go with the championship leader. I think I'm going to go with Thierry Neuville. And there's been some Hyundai stories circulating today, which we may pick up on by the time the event's over and on the show next week. So keep an eye out for more WRC news coming your way. I'm going to go with Thierry Neuville for Greece. Kobe, who are you going with?
Yeah, it would be great to see one of the full-timers get in. So, one of these part-timers like Rovanperä and Ogier just dropping in, getting the job done, and looking at that pick-a-winner leaderboard there. Yeah, I've already conceded down that my pick-a-winner reign is going to end, that we're basically just playing for second right now. And I guess the only way we can catch Matt, if I take Joe up on his offer to make a playoff system for pick-a-winner, that's probably going to be the only way we can beat Matthew at this point. But like you said, Matt pretty much got the champion. He got one hand on the pick-a-winner championship. But getting back to the championship race in the World Rally Championship, Acropolis Rally Greece, I'm gonna go with Sebastian Ogier. I feel like he's a safe pick here for me.
My 2 points keeping me in play there. Thank you, Marc Marquez. Talking of Marc Marquez, we've also got MotoGP this weekend, and we're going to do the sprint races we always do when we get to a MotoGP weekend. They're in Misano for the first of 2 races at Misano, where they're back there in a couple of weeks' time. Ducati on home ground. Which one of them will win this week? Sprint race. I'm going to go with Jorge Martin, because I always go with Jorge Martin on a Saturday, and he generally picks me up a point. So that's where I'm going. Josh, who are you going with?
Oh, I will go for Pecco Bagnaia for the one reason is that he desperately needs to pick up his act after last weekend, and that'll be in Hot Knots later. So I'll go with Bagnaia.
Yeah, 2 interesting picks. I'm gonna keep it separate. Gonna keep the good times rolling. Marc Marquez, I think he'll get the sprint race victory. And I didn't and until I was putting together the script for this show, I had no idea they were gonna be racing at Misano, for 2 consecutive races. Interesting decision there. Got the San Marino Grand Prix and then the Emilia Romagna right after that.
Well,
interesting scheduling there with MotoGP. And now I'm gonna turn it over to you, Matt, for our Hots and Knots segment.
Yeah, they've sprung that second one in. It's in 2 weeks' time. It's not back to back. There's a week in between, which is bonkers, because it should have been Kazakhstan, then India, then maybe Qatar. Who knows? And they've ended up lumping themselves back at Misano. Adam is going with Ogier for WRC, the part-timer, but still within a chance of winning the championship, and Jorge Martin to win the sprint race on Saturday. Time for Hots and Knots then with Josh. Plenty to talk about from the weekend that was at Aragon and at Monza. I think we'll start. Where do you want to start with Hots from the weekend? There is plenty.
There really isn't. It was such a good weekend for motorsport until we got to NASCAR. I know that's cruel, but it was. yeah. I really enjoyed the Formula One weekend as a whole. It was perfect from Formula 3 to Formula 2 to Formula 1. There was great racing throughout, and yeah, Formula 1 wasn't the usual. Oh my God, this is all exploding! We're all going to be like, no, bonkers. Who's going to win? It was a strategy game again. It was a chess game, and I thought it was really good. And the one thing I really enjoyed is that McLaren made Lando Norris give up a race win to Oscar Piastri in Hungary because the team said that they're going to need you're going to need us and him to win the title. And when it comes down to it, Piastri just goes right round the outside and goes into the distance and takes the lead on the opening lap, losing a position to Leclerc. That's a hot for me because it shows that Piastri is not going to be the number 2 driver. And it's a hot because it means that we have McLaren who are going to be fighting each other and fighting Red Bull. So this is going to be a really tasty season. And Ferrari have now not got the 4th fastest car. They've got the 3rd fastest car. And yeah, it's all looking good. And I think another hot I've got to say is Red Bull. What on earth has happened? It is self-destructing no end. I know I shouldn't be, but I am happy because this has happened before. Anybody who's new to Formula One, who's coming through Drive to Survive, definitely probably won't know about Ferrari in the early 2000s. We've gone through this before where we had one driver and one team dominating for years in Formula One. And I don't know about you, Matt, but it started to feel like we were in 2000, 2001, 2002 for the last couple of years. Now, this year, it's more and more reminding me about 2003. Yes, Max is probably going to win the title like Michael won in 03, but there's loads of little stories. Like that year, we had Williams and McLaren coming in, and Renault won a race out of nowhere. And there was just little stories throughout the entire year. And that's what this one's developing into. And I don't think Max is going to dominate next year. I think we're going to skip over that. And we're going to head next year to 2005 type of level of racing, where it's wheel to wheel, week in week, and there's loads of drama and controversy. It's really good right now. I've said for years, just wait until Red Bull get that penalty for the cost cap breach. I said it would never affect 22 or 23. It was always going to affect 24. It has affected 24. They've been kicked harder by losing Jonathan Wheatley, Adrian Newey as well, and all the other people behind the scenes. I think I read somewhere over the weekend that they've lost about 20 of their 40 engineers from the technical department because they've all been poached by Aston Martin, Williams, and Mercedes. They've all been poached to those teams. So it is insane how much they've lost. So the definite hot, I think, in general, is just that Formula One is in crazy territory right now. And we're going into the last 8 races. Not a clue what's happening.
Exactly. You're right. That Schumacher era, you'd watch to the first pit stops.
Yeah.
And then you go, he's going to
Good
win.
night.
I certainly, but then you had some kid from Spain come up and start running him a bit. Then 05, of course, won the championship. Here we go. Right, we're back now.
Now we're back. Yeah.
We're back now. And then there was obviously Raikkonen in there and Montoya in the Williams and then McLaren. And then it got good again. But yeah, you're right. I mean, that was a terrific race on Sunday. Let me just pick up on Adam's comment first. He says F1 at Monza hot. Briscoe winning at Darlington. Scotty Mack winning at Milwaukee. It's Sandown this weekend. I know Matt's ready as well. Well, I would be, but I've still got Townsville, Tasmania, and Sydney still to watch. It's still July in my catching up and podcast listening world.
You got summer.
Yeah, exactly. I'm still pre-Olympic break. It's great. What was I going to say? Yeah, Monza. Great race. 2 pit stops at Monza. That's unheard of in a dry race. Although the heist of the century, which I know our friend Matthew Owens was extremely delighted about, was old Charlie Leclerc getting his victory, second Monza win in a red overall, although all those rumours about them being in black overalls were quashed, weren't they? But great. And he's not in out of this championship fight too. And you're going to have, much like the beginning of the Grand Prix at the weekend, the 2 McLarens getting involved. And here comes Leclerc, while Verstappen's in 5th because the car's not very good anymore. Maybe
it's good.
Maybe I'm trying to find some wood to touch. Maybe Leclerc is in this championship fight after all. And you think back to last season where Max and Perez, of course, because he won a few at the beginning of the year. They won every race apart from at Singapore. And this year,
nobody's perfect.
I think it was Jess said in the chat, in the grid chat over the weekend on Slack, the parity is just chef's kiss at the moment. It is, Mercedes looked really good for the early part of the weekend, but then it kind of fell away a little bit in the race, and Russell got caught up with Perez. It's looking forward and we talked about it a little bit last week, didn't we? Looking forward to Baku and Singapore coming up, because they're just curveballs anyway. So
it's a shame we don't have Japan at this time of the year. Japan.
I was saying that to somebody at work this week. We're looking forward to Japan. Oh no, hang on a minute. We had it in April.
Yeah, because wrong time. A little bit of a wet race from Japan. That unpredictability that I had at that time. That's where it needs to be. They need to move it back. Doesn't work.
Yeah, I wouldn't be against it.
No.
Other Monza hots. And Kobe touched on it in the headlines there. Formula 3. Oh my goodness me! If you haven't seen it, and I haven't watched it yet, but I was watching on Twitter, if that makes sense, as it was all unfolding on Sunday morning. Just it's head exploding stuff. There's cars off here. There's cars off there. There's championship people getting involved in incidents, and then on the very last corner of the very last lap, a bit like, is that Glock? Is that Leo? Yes, it is, coming down the inside with a block pass to take the championship. We need a playoffs. If Ben's watching, we need a playoffs in Formula 3, Ben, because the championship, he won the championship without winning a race. Congratulations to him. Bit of not press release talking there that he's now won the championship with the best F3 team and he's moving to the best team in F2. Well, I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
Invicta aren't the best team in F2.
No,
they're okay.
They've had a shocking season with
They look good at the
start of the
beginning
year.
of the year.
Yeah.
But they did win, of course, at the weekend with Bortoletto coming from the back to win
What the
on
hell happened there?
as well, wasn't it? Yeah, I thought,
At
goodness.
Monza, he did a back to, he got that safety car timed to perfection. That when that came out and he got it through, that was brilliant.
Happened at Monaco, didn't it? Who was it that won at Monaco? And Hadjar lost his head on the radio because
wasn't commentating on that one.
On Sunday. It was a Sunday morning race.
Crawford? Was it Crawford? Jack Crawford.
Yeah,
came from 14th. Yeah. Jess said that in our
won the
commentary
race
as well.
He hung out waiting for a safety car in a Ricky Stenhouse Jr. style move, and actually it happened for him. Aragon Hots, Jake Dixon, brilliant. He's not out of the championship in Moto 2. Wave the British flag.
I still don't know if Dad knows about that. I don't know. I haven't seen the race. I was like, have you seen Moto 2 yet? He said, no. I was like, oh, I won't tell you that. It's now Wednesday. I don't think he knows.
And of course, Mr. Marquez back after 1,000 and whatever it was days between
1,046.
That was it. Yeah, of course it was 46.
Yeah, I was giggling when I said it. Really?
Just good to see him back and the outpouring of emotion on that cool down lap. We had a bit of it on Saturday, of course, with the sprint, but then on Sunday,
it's worrying. A Grand Slam. He did a Grand Slam. Every single session he topped bar warm up, and warm up doesn't count because it's not timed anymore.
Yeah, and it was wet.
Yeah, and he did one lap and just said, no, I'm not going to risk it. So he's using smart. But I said in commentary with Megan, it was the perfect weekend for him because we weren't at Aragon last year. The track was being resurfaced. So that GP23 bike had no data on it. But also the factory Ducatis, because the GP24 and 23 are virtually identical, they had no data either. So they've gone into this weekend on a completely level playing field, and it was the first time that Mark could actually show what he's got without having to override the bike and play catch up. And if Marc Marquez can do that on a 23 bike, when he jumps to the 25 in the factory team next year, I think he's now put a lot of people up their back that, oh my God, he's actually going to be quite quick and quite competitive because he's not going to have to override the bike to catch up to the ones who've got more data than him. He's going to be the one setting the data. And Mark is back. I said in the commentary, don't call it a comeback. He's always been here. And it's really quite scary how much he's going to be fighting now.
Yeah, I think we were all excited at the start of the year. I think on our prediction, we do not need F3 flaps. I know, I was teasing you, Ben, and you've bitten. Well done.
What race winners we had, though? We may as well.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah. Although I will accept Arca East playoffs because it means Zachary Tinkle makes the championship 4. Go back to Encore from the other night to hear Ben and Brandon talking about that. Extremely excited, says Matthew. There's no greater victory in Formula One than a Ferrari victory at Monza. I think he's probably back. That and Lewis winning at Silverstone, I think, at the in the current, and obviously Max winning at Zandvoort, although
he didn't.
Maybe somewhat less, and he didn't. He's up there. What was I going to say? Other motorbike hots, quickly, away from MotoGP, and then most of this has happened today. Alvaro Bautista has re-signed in World Superbike for another year.
I hate him. He drenched me at Donington.
He's going to get beaten by Top Rack anyway, but
yeah.
Thanks for coming, Alvaro. Hot to Nicolo Canepa, former MotoGP rider and now 3-time endurance world champion. He has announced his retirement at the end of the season. That's been announced today, so congratulations to Nicolo. Also in retirement hot news, Larry Ten Voorde winning the Super Cup Championship again at the weekend and going, I'm done. Thank you. I've done it 3 times now, and I'm doing a Rosberg. And I'm taking my helmet, and I'm going. Well, after the German Championship's finished, he's going home. So that opens the door for people in Super Cup to win.
I didn't like that because that means I didn't get to commentate on him winning the last race because I stepped out of the box for the last 2 races to do the Moto 2s, and I didn't get to commentate on his last race win. But Omi got it and got the championship. Adriano Bautista. Still not forgiving him. I was standing right at the edge of the podium, race 1 on the Saturday, and he drenched me. I got back in stinking champagne into the WCR paddock as well, because all these mechanics are just in front of me, and I was stood there, and he just sprayed me. So I talked about it on the show. Not nice.
One final motorbike related hot is that it sounds like, and they was tweeted by the World Superbike account yesterday, that the OMG team from BSB are going to take their 2 riders to Jerez as wildcards for World Superbike at the end of the year. Hot.
Good job.
Love a wildcard. Should happen more often. That's that side of the coin. Now let's turn the piece of paper upside down and talk about the knots from the weekend. And there's plenty of those as well.
Should we get the big one out of the way in MotoGP?
The crash.
Yeah.
The Alex Marquez Pecco Bagnaia collision.
I said in commentary, Pecco Bagnaia is very, very lucky to be alive and not have a snap neck. The way that bike gripped on the helmet and spun him around like a tabletop was I've never seen an accident like that. From memory, it all I could think of at that moment when I saw the tire hit the helmet was of Marco Simoncelli, and that very accident. I was like, I did not want to see that again, and it literally shook me standing in the commentary box how much that velocity of it, and I had to keep talking. I was very much shocked, and I've never seen the wheel grip on the helmet, and he ragdolled him, just went whoosh, right round, and then Alex hits the barrier with the bike on him as well. And in my Hodgson said it was a racing incident. I don't agree. In my opinion, it was Pecco Bagnaia's fault. Alex Marquez has made the mistake, and he's out of control, and he's trying to turn into a corner. Bagnaia has seen he's out of control and doesn't give him any racing room. He continues to take the racing line. In my opinion, it was Pecco's fault.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from, and Marquez has come back from off the track.
Yeah,
he was in the runoff area, wasn't he? And he came back on.
So he had to come back, and he wasn't in the right line for braking.
You would have thought Bagnaia would have seen him coming back on, and then tried to do the old up and under move and get back under him on the inside, or at least line him up for the next corner after that. But yeah, really scary crash, and fortunate though they were both able to walk away, and also fortunate for a TV standpoint that they had that 2,200 frame per second camera at that corner. Because once we knew the guys were all right, we got to see a really slowed down angle of it. Of course, there was all the fallout afterwards of did he lift and did he do this?
It was all
on
ridiculous.
Purpose, and all the old needle being brought back up again between the Rossi camp, which Bagnaia of course is part of in some way, shape or form, and the Marquez camp. Took a bit of a gloss off Mark's win, a little bit, but and of course it's not ruined Bagnaia's championship, but he had a shocking weekend, didn't he? 2 awful getaways. I mean, absolutely terrible.
They can't. Saturday he had an excuse. Sunday he didn't because they cleaned the grid. So,
you say that, but I think it was between Moto 2. No, it would. Between Moto 2 and the Grand Prix, Alex Crivier did some demo laps on his old championship-winning 500cc bike, and there was a trail of oil left across the grid. And whose grid slot did it cover?
Oh, you're joking me!
Yeah. Yes. So if you saw the pictures of the Ducati mechanics and David Teodozzi waving at him from the pit wall, it's because they didn't want him lined up in the oil.
Oh my god!
Yeah, so they didn't do a Rossi and send him out on the scooter the night before to clean it, i.e. Qatar 2004.
Oh yeah, they got thingy for that, didn't
they? Start from the back of the grid for cleaning his grid spot illegally. But yeah, that happened. Thanks to Mr. S. Patterson for that.
Simon's been everywhere the last couple of weeks.
He's been absolutely on fire.
I think Maddie's on holiday. I've not heard from her in a while.
Let's still have a Ciara on a bit of a holiday, aren't they? Moto 2 not. Sergio Garcia.
What happened to him?
Yeah. What happened to him? He had an absolutely terrible weekend. He was out of the top 20, got a long lap penalty for exceeding track limits, and just pulled in. He went, I'm done. I've finished. I'll just stop here. Can't bother to do the next 2 laps or whatever it was. There's no point, is there? And his teammate who had a broken hand.
Kept going.
Not smashed him. He came 8th, 7th, whatever it was.
Agura.
So that was good. Also not for Moto 2, obviously goes Joe Roberts, who was in a good position to get some more points and chucked it inexplicably towards the end of the race.
Always does.
And the Aragon track surface, and the fact that every year we go, even though they've resurfaced it, and every year they go to Aragon, and it's just full of junk. Every year off the line at Aragon is just painfully dusty.
See, that all we were talking about all weekend was track surfaces.
Did you see the Pedro Acosta onboard?
I did, yeah.
he goes to tear off,
It's not there.
and he hasn't got any left. And he just did with the back of his glove, which was.
Was that in the warm-up session as well, or was it in practice? Was in the warm practice?
I thought it was in the race from what I saw. So.
Oh, I think he did it twice then. It could have been. I think it was. Oh, was it? Hang on, was it in the sprint? It was in the sprint race, wasn't it?
Maybe it was then. Well, he
would
have had less. He would have had less on there, I guess, for the sprint, and realised he had none left, and had to do the old.
It all blurred into one after the other. I can't.
Did a bit. I think you've got a Darlington-related knot that you'd like to share with the group.
Oh,
or have you done that already?
No, I haven't. What a boring race! My God, I've never in a commentary felt that exhausted because nothing had happened. It's easy to commentate on a boring race when because there's always something to talk about. But that race, being 500 miles long as well, it was dead as water, dead as ditch water. Nothing was going on. We had Jackson, me, JT, Jack, and Matthew all in the commentary box in stage one, and we were just having giggles and laughs and jokes and everything. Well, because nothing was happening. They were all waiting to get to the stage break. Stage two felt like it went on for 4 hours, and then it just would not end. And you could feel yourself getting physically more and more tired and drained as the race went on and the sun began to set. And then by the time we got to the end of stage three, it was like, oh, okay. Oh, there's a caution now. And it was only when that caution came out, the final 25 minutes of that race were actually entertaining. But the first 3 hours and 40 minutes were not. And I think that's a big problem where you've got to this part of the season and there was nothing going on. I said, why? We should have had the different tyres there. That would have made it more interesting. If we had a difference of tyres at that race, it would have worked. But it went on too long. There was too much fuel saving, too much tyre saving, no one going for overtakes, everyone playing it for stage points. And I think that's why I said Darlington should not be the regular season finale. It just doesn't work. It does not work. It did not work. And it felt quite anticlimactic to the great year we've had, that the regular series champion was crowned and everyone went, and it was like, yeah, but Chase Briscoe just won the race as well. He's managed to get himself into the playoffs. Kyle Busch isn't in the playoffs for the first time in years. And that's how it felt. It was awful. Daytona, however, get that back as a season finale. It was fantastic.
Well, and we have, of course, for next year. It's just with the Olympic break, the way that it's worked out this year, it had to be Darlington instead of Daytona. Xander says, we've got a late breaking question. When do you think Kyle Busch will retire? I think maybe between 26 and 30. I think it'll be, well, I tell you what, if he doesn't win a race this year and continue that long streak he's got of winning at least one race every year, he might contemplate it. I've got to, if I tell you what, if we get to the All-Star race / Coke 600 end of May next year and he hasn't been competitive or won a race, I think he might hang it up.
Do you reckon he'll walk before the playoff season next year?
No, he'll see the season through, but I think he'll announce that he's had enough.
Would he do what Truex has done this year and do a goodbye?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. And then maybe do the odd selected race. You, as you know, he loves a truck race. So somewhere to do a truck race. I think I'm all out on knots, if you are.
Yeah,
but
I think
one hot to come is that it's playoff time, and I'm back in the commentary box this weekend with Mr. Owens at Atlanta for USRN, and I'm very much looking forward to being back for the next 10 weeks.
Oh wow, you're back
all the way through from here to Phoenix. Can't wait.
No doubt we'll be joining you crossing paths at some point as well.
Oh yes, indeed, over the weekend. Yeah,
probably will be, because that just tends to happen now. Or JT will be moonlighting with you as well.
Yeah.
He did that over the weekend as well. That's how we ended up with 5 people in the comments box, because Matthew was solo. Because Seth was late back.
The USRN JVM floozy that is Josh T.
Yeah, it just goes about everything as well. He'll be fine. I think. Oh, we're doing Goodwood. We're doing Goodwood this weekend, by the way.
Nice.
The revival. Yeah, we're setting up the stream so it goes all down, and we're dropping over some races, and then The trackside will take us with some. So, yeah, that'd be fun. Feel free to pop up if you want. And taking a look at our upcoming schedule from this weekend here on Grid. On Sunday, our Grid Live wrap-up will recap the WRC and MotoGP. And of course, it'll also serve as our preview of the NASCAR Cup Series playoff opener at Atlanta. Monday, Grid Encore will recap the Cup Series and Xfinity Series races at Atlanta as well. And of course, we're back on Wednesday next week for the next episode of Grid Tonight as well. You can please do continue to subscribe to our YouTube channel here. Thank you very much for helping us reach the 1,000 subscriber milestone. Now we're well on the way to the road to 2,000 subscribers. You can hit the bell icon to get notifications for when we go on the air, and you can follow all of our social medias and visit gridnetworktv.com. You can take 5 minutes to invest in the Grid Network through Patreon. You can join Colin, Mark, Deshelle, Robin, David, and Matthew, who invest each month in the Grid Network, and we encourage you to join these fine folks who help us keep us on the air. And once we hit $500 per month, we can start sending our team to the track to cover more races and continue expanding our coverage. Link to all of that is in the video description. And if you want to make a one-time donation, you can click on the Buy Me a Coffee link. You get your name on the board and invest as much as you want. And you can consider buying a specific on-air personality a cup of coffee, and I will thank you on the air for it as well. For Kobe Lambeth and Matt White from Grid Endurance Performance Index, I'm Joshua Birch. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next time. Good night.